I stood in the parking lot of that title company office, holding a piece of paper I did not fully understand. It was a Tuesday morning, early enough that the lot was still half empty. The paper in my hands was a copy of a deed transfer. My name was printed across the top, and at the bottom, on the signature line, was a signature I did not remember writing. Have you ever held something in your hands and felt like the ground under you was not quite where you thought it was? I had been a charge nurse for 35 years. I knew how to stand in a doorway and deliver news that would change a family forever. I knew how to keep my voice steady when my hands wanted to shake. I had watched people receive the worst moments of their lives, and I had learned to read the signs before the words even came. The way someone's jaw tightens, the way a breath gets held just a half second too long. I was good at reading rooms. I thought I was good at reading people. I never once thought I would be the last person in my own life to understand what was happening. If any part of that feels familiar to you, please stay with me, because I almost lost everything. And what I found on the other side of that morning changed things in ways I am still figuring out how to name. My name is Riley Prez. I am 69 years old. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and I retired 4 years ago after 35 years as a charge nurse at a community hospital not far from where I grew up. My husband Frank died 3 years ago. I am telling this story because I know there are women out there who have spent their whole lives showing up for everyone else. And by the time someone starts quietly erasing them, they do not even feel it happening. Frank ran a hardware store on Marymount Avenue for 32 years. Not a franchise. Just Frank. A worn wooden counter, a back room that smelled like machine oil and sawdust no matter how many times he swept it, and a rotating group of regulars who came in for the conversation as much as for the supplies. The land underneath that store was something he bought when we were young and had next to nothing. He looked at that lot and saw something the rest of the neighborhood had not caught up to yet. Asheville grew up around him, slowly and then all at once, and by the time he was gone, that piece of ground was worth considerably more than either of us had ever sat down to think about. We did not live in each other's pockets. I worked nights. Frank was up before the sun. There were whole weeks when our schedules only crossed at the edges. A cup of coffee left warm on the stove. A note stuck to the refrigerator in his handwriting, small and always a little crooked, like he was in a hurry even when he was not. Some mornings that note was the only sign he had passed through. He died from a stroke. No warning. Not enough time. Emma, our daughter, came home with her husband, Derek, to help with the arrangements. She was 42, and she had her father's way of going quiet when she did not know what to say. Derek was louder. He had that quality some people have, where they fill a room without being asked to. After the funeral, they stayed a little longer, then a little longer after that, and somewhere in those weeks, Derek began taking over the paperwork from the store. He said I did not need to be dealing with all of that on top of my grief. He said it gently. He said it more than once. I let him. I was tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. I trusted Emma, and trusting Emma meant trusting the person she had chosen. That is what you do. Or at least, that is what I thought you did. Looking back now, I can see the shape of things more clearly. Derek mentioned once that the store had been running at a loss. He asked carefully whether I had ever thought about simplifying my life. He said a few times that Frank would have wanted me to rest. Taken one at a time, those things sounded like concern. Taken together, they were something else. I just was not reading them that way yet. 6 months after Frank died, Derek sat me down at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. He said the store was carrying debt, tax complications that needed to be addressed quickly. He used words I did not hear often: LLC conversion, liability shield, asset protection. I had spent 35 years learning the language of the body. Legal and financial language was Frank's territory, and Frank was gone. Dumbs that ever happened to you, where someone uses enough technical words in a row and you start nodding because stopping to ask feels like admitting something. Emma sat next to Derek and did not say anything. She nodded occasionally, the way you nod when someone is explaining something you have already agreed to. I noticed that. I put it somewhere I was not ready to look at yet. Derek said the only way to protect me from the tax liability was to move the property into an LLC, with him and Emma listed as co-owners. He said it was still in the family. He said it like that phrase was a door closing softly, like the word family was the end of the conversation. I asked if I should read all of it first. He said, of course, take your time. His pen was already uncapped and resting on top of the first page. The kitchen light buzzed faintly. My coffee had gone cold. I looked at the cup and thought about getting up to warm it, and then did not. I signed. My hand shook a little when I wrote my name, not because anything was wrong with me, but because I was tired in a way I had not yet found the words for. I did not count the pages. I did not ask for a copy. I had trusted Emma her entire life, and trusting her meant trusting the man she had married. 2 weeks later, Derek called to say a developer had reached out about buying the land. Big number, he said. They would take care of me with the proceeds. I asked how much. He said he would tell me once negotiations were further along. I said, okay. I told myself I was letting my daughter handle something she was capable of handling. What I was actually doing was something else entirely, though I did not know it yet. There was one detail I kept returning to later. During that phone call, Emma had been standing in the kitchen doorway. Not sitting at the table, not in the other room. Just standing at the edge, one hand resting on the doorframe, eyes on a spot on the floor. Her face was not the face of someone who was happy about what was happening. I saw it. I let it go. Grief had made me generous with things I should have pressed on. One morning a few weeks after that, I drove down Merriman Avenue out of habit. The old sign was still there above the door, faded a little at the corners, the way it had been for years. But taped to the inside of the glass was a small printed notice. Property under contract. Development pending. I pulled into the parking lot and turned off the engine. I sat there for about 20 minutes. I did not cry. I looked at those 2 words and thought about Frank mopping that floor every Friday evening after he locked up. He never asked anyone to do it for him. He knew every regular by name. He knew their kids, knew what they were working on in their garages and backyards. Development pending. 30 years of his life. And no one had thought to call me. I did not fall apart. I had been a nurse too long for that. I knew what shock looked like from the outside, and I knew the first thing you do after shock is not react. You breathe. Then you figure out where you are. I drove home and made tea. I did not turn on the television. I stood at the counter while the water boiled, and I thought about the locked drawer in Frank's desk, the one he mentioned to me years ago on a Sunday afternoon when nothing particular was happening. He had said, if things ever get complicated, open it. I had not thought about that drawer since. I thought about it now. The key was inside one of my old nursing notebooks, spiral-bound lined pages, the kind I used to carry on shift. Frank knew I would never throw those away. I found it on the 3rd notebook I pulled off the shelf. I sat down on the edge of the bed and held the key for a moment. He had known exactly where I would look. I almost smiled at that. Almost inside the drawer was a commercial insurance file, several pages thick with tabs and dates. And there, near the back, an independent appraisal of the Merriman Avenue property completed 18 months before Frank died. The number on that appraisal was not close to anything Derek had mentioned when he was explaining the urgency of restructuring. It was not even in the same range. Underneath the file was a small sealed envelope, Frank's handwriting on the front. It read, "For Harmon, if I'm not here to send it myself." Harmon was Frank's business attorney. I had heard the name a handful of times. I had never met him. I did not open the envelope that night. I just sat at the desk with it in my hands. Frank had not left me instructions. He had not left me a warning exactly. He had left me something to carry forward. He trusted that I would know what to do with it. The next morning, I called Mia. We had worked the same floor at the hospital for nearly a decade, and she had been one of my closest friends for 30 years. A few years back, she had made a change, left nursing, gone to work as a paralegal at a real estate law firm nearby. I did not explain much on the phone. I told her I needed a set of eyes on something. She was at my door within the hour. We opened the envelope together at the kitchen table. One page, Frank's careful small handwriting, addressed to Mr. Harmon. He wrote that he had been uneasy about Derek for a long time and did not want to say so out loud because he did not want to put that weight on Emma. He wrote that the Merriman Avenue land was the one concrete thing he could leave me that no one could argue away. He asked Harmon to keep a copy in case I ever needed to know I was not imagining things. That last part, not imagining things. He had known I might need to hear that someday, and he made sure someone would be there to say it. Maya read it twice. Then she looked up and said she wanted to call Harmon and pull the deed before she said anything else. I asked her what she was looking for. She said she just wanted to see it. Harmon was still in practice. When Mia explained the situation, he was quiet on the phone longer than felt comfortable. He told us to come in the next morning with whatever documents I still had. His office was small and neat, the kind that has not changed much in 20 years. He pulled the deed transfer Derek had filed with the county recorder's office and went through it page by page without speaking. When he reached a page near the back, he stopped. He asked me if I remembered signing that specific page. He turned it toward me. My name was on the signature line. The letters were shaped like my name, but I had signed my name on discharge papers and medication orders and patient consent forms for 35 years. I knew my signature the way I knew the sound of a blood pressure cuff releasing. That was not mine. I sat straight in my chair and told him no. I did not sign that page. Harmon explained that under North Carolina law, a forged signature on a deed transfer makes the entire document void. Not voidable. Void as in it had never legally happened. The property had never changed hands. Every plan Derek built on top of that transfer had been built on something that did not exist under the law. I had been the sole legal owner the entire time. I sat with that for a moment. I thought about Derek uncapping his pen at my kitchen table and telling me it was still in the family. 2 days before the scheduled closing, Emma called. Her voice was unsteady in a way I recognized, the way a patient sounds when they know the news is coming and have not found the words to ask for it. She did not explain anything. She just said, "Mom, I just want you to know I love you." Then she was gone. I sat with the phone in my lap, and something I had been pushing away started to settle into something I could actually look at. Emma had not designed this. I could hear that in her voice. She had known about it, had sat at the table and nodded, had stood in the doorway and said nothing. She had let it happen because she was afraid of Derek, afraid of the debt they were carrying, afraid of what speaking up would cost her. I understood that kind of fear. I had seen it in patients who stayed quiet when they should have told someone something was wrong. But staying quiet in front of something wrong is still a choice. Emma had made hers. I was not going to pretend otherwise. I just stopped that evening, putting her and Derek in the same place in my thinking. I did not forgive her that night. I just stopped hating her. There is a difference, and it matters. The closing was on a Tuesday morning. I wore navy blue. It was Frank's favorite color on me, and I wanted something of him in that room, even if no one else in the room knew why. The title company office was on the second floor of a building downtown. Small room, long table, overhead light a little too bright for the space. It smelled like paper and recycled air. When Harmon and I came through the door, Derek and the developer's representative were already seated. Derek looked up. His jaw tightened, just slightly. He did not say anything right away. Harmon set a folder on the table without rushing. Inside, the confirmation from the county recorder's office, copies of my signature from decades of nursing employment records, used as a comparison, and a written legal opinion on the invalidity of the deed transfer. The title company representative read through the documents carefully. Then he looked at Derek and said he could not proceed. He said there was a legal challenge to the chain of title that would need to be resolved before any transaction could move forward. Derek started talking. He mentioned the LLC family arrangements, my best interests. His voice held for a little while, and then it did not. He was not the kind of angry I expected. He was the kind of quiet that comes when a man realizes the thing he was certain he was holding has gone soft in his hands. I did not look at him. I looked out the window toward Merriman Avenue. I could not see the corner from where I was sitting, but I knew which direction it was. Before I stood up, I said one thing. I said Frank built that with his hands, and I would be the one to decide what happened to it. Then I picked up my bag and walked out. Harmon followed. The deal fell through. The developer moved on. The debt Derek and Emma were carrying before any of this started was still there, still theirs. No one was arrested. No one went to court. I thought about pursuing it, and then decided I did not want to spend another year of my life reopening something I was trying to close. But I never signed another document without Harmon sitting next to me. That line did not move. I did not reach out to Emma for a full month. When she finally called and asked if she could come by, I sat with that question for a few seconds. I said yes, but come alone. The conversation that afternoon was not a resolution. It was a beginning of something, or possibly nothing. Emma had started seeing a therapist. She did not make excuses, and I did not ask for them. I did not know where the two of us would end up. I did not need to know that day. I sold the property the following spring on my own terms with a different developer Harmon helped me find. That developer agreed to preserve a portion of the space for community use. With part of the proceeds, I bought a small cottage on the western slope outside Asheville, a stretch of road Frank and I used to drive past on Sunday afternoons when we had nowhere to be. He used to slow down and look at the tree line and say, "Someday, Riley, someday." I never knew if he meant it as a real thing or just a thing you say. I think maybe he meant it. I put another portion of the money into a fund for medical equipment at the community clinic near where the hardware store used to stand. The fund is named after Frank. On the first morning in the cottage, I made coffee and carried it to the chair by the front window. The Blue Ridge was out there the way it always is, not asking anything of anyone. I did not try to feel grateful or healed or at peace. I just sat there and drank my coffee and watched the light move across the mountain. For the first time in 3 years, that was enough. Frank used to say that a good nurse knows when to hold on and when to let go. I spent 35 years knowing that for other people. It took almost losing everything to finally know it for myself. If you have ever been handed a pen before you had time to think, I want to ask you something. What would you have done if you had found that envelope? Leave your answer below. And if this story reached someone you know, please share it. I read every word you leave here.